Email. Okay, so what I'd like to do first is just find out. Um, and Mike's trying to get a hold of us here. Okay, Wendy and good. You guys are great. All right, thank you. Hi guys, thanks for joining us. Sorry about the glitch, my bad. Mike, there's a chat box. If any of you don't have volume for some reason, there's a chat box up in the upper left-hand corner. You can always type, and we can see it. It'll show up on the screen. So we had a problem with volume with someone last night, and if you have anything to say, just feel like typing it in. Go right ahead. What I'd like to find out right off the bat before I start is how you guys felt about presenting last week for the Emotional Tank demo. It's something that Ruben and I decided that we wanted to try to do earlier in the course than waiting till the very end. So I just wanted to hear some feedback. Did you find that valuable? Did you like getting a chance to do that and get some feedback early on? What do you feel was valuable about it, or comments? Anybody can jump in. Just a couple minutes to get some feedback on that. I know you've never done it the other way, so it's hard to say compared to the way we used to do it, where you don't present until the end, but I thought it might be good. Yes.
Kelly, this is Mark Newman. I thought it was really valuable, and the comments I received from you I thought were incisive and helpful, and I think it's great to have it mid-course so there can be follow-up if need be, and I think it seems to me it'd be much more effective in the middle than at the end.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Comments or feedback on your? I know it was short. I know it was only 10 minutes, but does anybody have any? Do anybody have anything you want to share about that?
Yeah.
I do.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I'm not sure who you're.
Go ahead, Wendy. Go ahead.
Okay, saying. Just as tricky when you're somebody who's used to presenting in front of a group to present in front of a computer is tough.
Yeah.
So that was my only feedback. That and the fact that I was a little crazy myself last week. But yeah, I think it's very helpful. And I would say my best feedback is, Kelly, when I saw you go and take notes, it's like, oh, she wrote down something I said. She must have liked that. So. That I was surprised at my reaction to that, but nice opportunity.
Good. All right. Well, thanks. Go ahead.
I thought it was extremely valuable, actually, because doing it at that juncture gave me a good pulse of where I'm at, and the critiques, if you will, I found to be very helpful, because given that opportunity to present again, I would be cognizant of, what went well, and equally cognizant of what I would need to adjust a little bit. So yes, very valuable.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do understand that it's kind of a funky setting, doing it on a Google Hangout. We know that most of you would be so much more comfortable in front of a live audience, because you can get the energy of the audience. You can read them a little bit more and get them engaged, and it's not just a little square at the bottom of your screen seeing if everyone's awake or asleep. But it really is the easiest way that we can get you to get out there and just presenting content. And I even had a couple of people said, this was really tricky because I wasn't sure how to phrase it. So forcing you to phrase something in a certain way, or what you want to say in here, but getting it out, sometimes it's not as smooth. Ruben and I were just talking a little bit earlier about, by the time you're finished this course, if you did the 10 minutes last week, and then you take advantage of a practice session that we're going to do next week, and then the final presentation that you're going to be doing, the final demonstration that you're going to be doing for us to end the course, that's really less than an hour of presenting and getting feedback. So the more opportunities that you have to practice demonstrating, to practice some ideas on how you would get the audience engaged, how would you put them into groups, how would you handle a certain situation or the scenario menu or whatever it is, the more time that you get to practice that, the better. Ideally, we would love you to practice in front of live audience, but that's just not always feasible for everybody where you were located. So, Ruben, did you have any comment on that before we move on?
It's funny. I was just typing in a little note to the group. I was just going to say, I really enjoyed getting to sit on some of your facilitations over the last 2 weeks. I really enjoyed it. Kelly, you're doing an awesome job with your team here, and I was impressed with so many things, including just how great folks were in terms of receiving feedback, and just appreciate how coachable you all are. So thank you.
Yeah, that is true. That is true, and it is exciting. It's hard. I think it was hard for some of you when I said, "Can you give feedback to the other person?" It was hard. Everyone's always so great at tank filling, and everyone's afraid to give constructive feedback. But I think it's so important because there's little things that you don't think of. I love it when I get feedback from a workshop. The first couple times you're like, "Oh, I thought I did a really good job," but after that, you realize that it is something that you might not have noticed, something you might have said a little bit differently or could have been clarified. So I really do appreciate you guys stepping out and giving some great constructive feedback. All right, well today, let me just explain how the next week or two are going to go, and then I'm going to jump right into honoring the game. So this is the last week for content. We're going to finish up with the honoring the game portion today. And then next week, starting on Monday, which is the 16th, yes, oh no, I'm sorry, Monday the 9th, I'm a week off. Monday the 9th, that's going to be an opportunity for you to practice. So we're now finished the course. We're finished all of the principles, the introduction. We're going to go through everything to the very end today. And to finish this course, you're given 20 minutes to do a mock demonstration of how you would present your introduction to the principle, or your introduction to the workshop, which is basically after the partner would introduce you. They have a bio that you give them, and they'll read the bio and say, Kelly is from, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She coached this and that, and thank you, Kelly, for coming. And then they turn it over to us. So when you do your final demonstration for us, we're going to ask that you start with your quick 5-minute intro, which is, we call it start with a bang or start smoothly in the SMAC recipe. And what that is just a quick, why are you here? Connect with the audience, get multiple voices in the room, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here, and why you are standing up there sharing the PCA mission with us. So that's less than 5 minutes for most people. Then you're going to have 15 full minutes to do the principle of your choice. So you can choose the Elm Tree of Mastery, you can choose the emotional tank again that many of you did last week, or you can choose honoring the game. So whichever principle you would like to do, you're going to get 15 full minutes. It's going to be 20 minutes total to present that.
Oh, we lost her.
Yeah, we lost Kelly. So any questions about what she was describing there for your practice opportunity and then for your final facilitation?
I have one question, if I may, Ruben.
Yeah.
My question is, I'm a little bit vague as far as that first 5-minute intro.
Yes. Okay. So let me text Kelly back right here, and then I can clear that up more. So yeah, the first 5 minutes is we want you to practice the first 5 minutes of a workshop, and so I'm gonna model a little bit of that for you, okay? Because I think that's a good way to answer the question. So thank you for that great introduction. I'm happy to be here in Orlando, Florida, with you all for our Double Goal coaching workshop, and when you came in, you picked up a copy of The Power of Double Goal Coaching. I'm going to make some references to that during our workshop today, but that's a lasting resource for you all to take with you. I know you'll enjoy that and make good use of it. This is a workshop. What does the word workshop mean to you? What comes to mind when you hear that word? And so folks will say, they might say work, or they might say activity, or they might say interaction. And I'll say, yes, all those things apply. And I'll say, who talks in a workshop? And they'll say, we all do. And I go, that's right. I've got some information to share with you. I've got lots of questions for you. But we're going to kick some things around together. We get to explore something today that we all care a lot about. Sports, coaching, working with young athletes. So that's what this is about, interaction. So I know some of you signed in before you got to. So anyway, that was Barry, I think, who asked the question, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, I cut it short, but that's how, that's what I would do if I were in your shoes carrying out Kelly's assignment. And I would lead into you know, I'd take them through text to sign in. Although you may not have to do that. You may not have to do that because Kelly may not have talked to you about that. But I would then say, so because this is a workshop and because we're going to hear from different people, I want you to hear now from Kevin Durant. And I would play that short Kevin Durant video. So Kevin Durant wanted to be a rec league coach. Why do you think he wanted to be a rec? Why was that his dream? So I would get into that first activity, and Barry, part of what I want to demonstrate for Kelly is getting other voices into the workshop, into the room within the first 5 minutes. So maybe I've made it clear, or maybe I've made it less clear. I don't know, Barry, but that's my attempt to answer your question. And,
you did. That was great. Thank you. What I was wondering is that at some point at the beginning of a workshop, someone's got to introduce the trainer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, typically. Go ahead, Kelly. If you want to take it from here.
No, when you first start a workshop, the partner will have a bio, the biography that you are going to send to them. They get sent ahead of time, and I even have it on a clipboard, and I'll hand it to them and say, "Would you mind introducing me?" They'll introduce you to give your little sports resume or your background resume, and then right off the bat, you start into your intro. So when we say intro, I just want to hear a little bit about what are your ideas for how you're going to start off the workshop right away. Okay. Ruben, did you get into then? I'm sorry I blanked out. Did you get into what happens after the practice session then, the following week?
No.
Okay, so basically, perfect world scenario. Next week we do practice sessions. So I'm going to have a sign-up sheet again, and you're going to be able to sign up for a 20-minute slot to do a practice session. Now, I know a lot of you practiced last week, and you might feel like, yeah, you know, I'm okay. I did that last week. But again, we encourage you, get in as much practice time as you can, as much the best trainers you can be. So please take advantage of the practice session. Try a different principle. Try something else. And then the following week, starting on the 16th, I'm going to have the final demos ready to go. So you will sign up for a practice time. Then we'll invite hopefully somebody from your local chapter to join us on the Hangout as well. And you're going to get a chance to demonstrate in front of a few people to have an audience. And that's when we will be deciding whether we feel you're ready to be an associate trainer. An associate trainer is someone that is now, we feel they know the content, they're ready to go, they are, we feel confident in your abilities as a trainer to spread the message correctly for PCA and passionately, and we will send you out there with a certified trainer to present part of the workshop. You might be presenting just one of the principles at a live workshop, and the certified trainer then will be the one to evaluate and say, you know what, I think, Heather, you did a great job, and I feel confident that you'll be able to go out and do this on your own. Or the person might say, you know what, she did great, but I think she needs a little bit more practice. Next time we send her out, why don't we have her do 2 of the principles or 3 of the principles or something like that. So that's how the process works. Ideally, we would love for you to go out, present one of the principles, and move on from there, and we feel that you're confident and certified and ready to go off and do a workshop on your own. But a lot of times that's not the case, and people might need a few practice sessions, which is perfectly normal and fine as well. When you're a certified trainer, if Ruben and I feel that you are, after you've done that first practice live with a real audience doing one principle, we will then recommend you for certification. When you go out to do your first solo workshop, we'd like to have a certified trainer there with you as well, just to have your back, just to be a support person if you have any questions or anything like that. So that's the perfect world scenario. It does differ slightly from chapter to chapter depending where you are, but that's how we would like it to go. So any quick questions on that? Okay. All right,
Kelly,
excellent.
Kelly has just.
Do you have something, Ruben?
One more thing about the opening 5 minutes during your practice and during your final facilitation. So what you're going to do is you're going to open the workshop, do 5 minutes, and then at some point you're going to fast forward into a later part of the workshop and do 15 minutes. Kelly, is that, am I understanding it correctly?
Correct. Yes.
And Kelly, if they wanted to do their whole 20 minutes as just the opening of the workshop, like to do the first 5 minutes and then continue on from there, is that okay, or would you prefer for them to actually fast forward to one of the principles?
I would prefer that they fast forward to one of the principles.
Yeah.
I have seen people do an introduction in 5 minutes that have gotten all the way up to the Elm Tree of Mastery principle. An introduction to the workshop doesn't need to be more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I would like you to do an actual principle for the bulk of the facilitation.
Got it.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to jump right into the workshop if everybody's ready to go. Sorry, it's taken me till 12:26 to do this. But all right, so today we are going to be focusing on our last principle, which is honoring the game. Which, again, this is all of these principles are so connected, and I love reading your discussion answers because you're all seeing the connection between one principle and the next, and Elm Tree of Mastery and filling emotional tanks. So this is the last slide on the emotional tank principle, and we've just finished talking about 5-to-1 ratio. We've talked about the value of it and how the real goal of filling emotional tanks is to have the athletes in an emotional state where they are so coachable. They're ready to go, they're ready to listen, and they can be at their peak. When we as coaches have these fantastic practice plans, we want them to be able to perform to the best of their ability, and the best way to do that is to have a full emotional tank. The last principle that we're going to talk about today is a great principle, sort of the umbrella principle over everything that we talk about. And I'm going to illustrate it with a video. Does this picture look familiar to any of you? This is a situation, this is a story of a game that happened in Central Washington in 2008. It actually won an ESPY award. And I'm going to just show you a video because a picture's worth 1,000 words, but a video is worth about 1,000,000. So let me turn up my volume here so you can hear it.
In a small town in the middle of Washington State, on a field inside a chain-link fence, in a game fewer than 100 people saw. The home run memorable not for the distance it traveled, or the game it decided, but for the meaning it carried. As a senior, this was Sarah Tucholsky's last chance to win a championship. She'd never hit a home run before, not in college, not in her life. The top of the second inning with 2 runners on the second pitch, that changed.
Sarah hit a home run, but as she rounded first base, she tore her ACL and she could not go any further. The umpire said that if she were replaced by a pinch runner, Sarah's homer would become a single. So let's find out what they did.
That's when Central Washington's Mallory Holtman, a player with more home runs than any other in conference history, a player for the opposing team, spoke up.
I went to the home plate umpire and asked if we could pick up and carry her, and he looked at me a little strange. And she says, you hit the ball over the fence, you deserve it.
For that reason only, because she deserved it, Holtman and Wallace began to carry the injured Tucholsky, stopping to touch her left foot on each base as the three made their way around the diamond.
That's the first home run of the season for number 8, Sarah Tucholsky.
Well, after the goosebumps go down, every time I see that story, I get goosebumps, and I just love that illustration of Mallory Holtman and Liz Wallace, 2 players that were not told by their coach to do anything. They took it upon themselves to have the courage to stand up and do what was right. And the reason that Mallory said she did it was because she deserved it. She wasn't thinking about the scoreboard, as we talked about. She wasn't a win-at-all-cost player. She was thinking about that Sarah Tucholsky hit a great home run, and she deserved it. So that's why she did it. My question to you is this. On the team that you coach, if 2 of your players decided to take it amongst themselves to do that type of, do that for an opposing player, would you be shocked? And that's my question for you. Would you be surprised? Or, like the coach of Mallory Holtman and Liz Wallace said afterwards when ESPN was all over it, they actually won an ESPY in 2008. I'm going to mute. Hold on one second. Won an ESPY in 2008. Is this something that you were shocked, Coach? Can you believe your players did this? And she said, I really wasn't, because I know those girls. And I know that they would have done that. I would actually have been more surprised if one of my players didn't come up with something like that. So as a coach, when I see this video, I think, who on my team would have stepped up and done that? And you probably all have a player that you could say, yeah, I know they would, because that's the kind of player they are. What we'd like to talk about today is a principle called honoring the game. And honoring the game is taking sportsmanship to a very detailed level. Because we use the analogy, we use trees a lot in PCA, and one of the things we talk about are the roots of your team. We all know how important it is to have strong roots. The roots of a tree are where you get all the nutrients, and what is the stronghold of your team and the foundation to keep your team in place. Leaves come and go. They change colors. They come, they go, they fly off. Trees die, they come back every year. But if the root system is not strong, your tree is not going to grow well. So I want you to think about this in terms of 5 areas of the game, and these 5 areas are areas that make your job very simple. Because as coaches, a lot of times we'll say, oh, you know, let's be a good sport, let's have good sportsmanship, let's talk about character. But when a situation happens on the field or on the pool or on the court or the track, sometimes we don't have the right language to be able to transmit to our coaches, to our players, that this is the culture that we want to uphold here. So let's take a look at these 5 areas. And what I like to think about is these 5 areas are black and white. A lot of times as coaches, we have to make quick decisions. And those decisions might be a little gray areas. Was it a foul? Was it not a foul? Was that disrespectful? Was it not disrespectful? I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these areas, and I want you to think about how being very clear with your players in defining each of these areas of respect will make your job that much easier. So again, we like to use acronyms. Our acronym for this is ROOTS. So these are 5 areas of the game. Well, would anybody like to take a guess what the first R might stand for? What portion of the game is an area of the game that players need to uphold? Shout it out. I know you're all on mute. It's kind of hard.
Rules.
Yes, rules. I heard rules. Thank you, JT. Yes, the rules of the game. So why are the rules of the game in place? Why do we have rules? Who can give me a very simple kindergarten answer why we have rules? So, go ahead.
So it's fair.
Exactly. So it's fair, so it's safe. Exactly. That's why rules are in place. Now, I want you to think to yourself, and again, this is hard. There's a big group and you're all on mute. But what I want you to think to yourself is we don't only talk about the written rule, we talk about the spirit of the rule. Because all of us in our individual sports know that there are rules that are broken and we can get away with it because it's just how you play the game. And so what I'd like you to do is think right now of a rule in the individual sport that you play that is broken a lot, and kids get away with it because that's just the way you play the game. For example, I played field hockey, and in field hockey you weren't allowed to hit the ball with your foot. Did it ever happen? Absolutely, all the time. Did it happen in front of the goal? Yes, it happened all the time. Did the whistle blow? Did the girls stop and say, hey, I hit the ball with my foot? No, because that's the way you played the game. In practice, I made the mistake of letting it go because in a scrimmage, I wanted things to be smooth. I didn't want to stop practice all the time. So I was actually teaching my girls that kicking the ball with your foot, oh, it's okay. Just keep playing, keep playing. What I didn't realize was in games, they were doing it and trying to get away with it. So can I have another example of a rule in your sport that players break? And it's sort of okay. Mason, go ahead.
Yeah, we for track meets you enter your best time, and a lot of times people will put down maybe a hopeful time.
Oh, okay. So for seeding and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay. I saw somebody else said tugging on uniforms. Yeah, absolutely. What else?
I've got one specific to basketball.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. It's very easy to do this and get away with it, and that's if my team, for instance, scores a basket, the player of mine that's closest to the basket can kind of tip it away a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not bang it into the 5th row, but just tip it away a little bit. And what that does is that gives us longer time to, more than enough time to get back in defensive transition and slows a fast breakdown. That's definitely against the rules, but an easy one to get away with.
Exactly. And we all know as experienced players that there's a lot of rules that we can get away with. So if we're honoring the game, we're truly going to teach our players to be respectful of the rules, the letter of the rule, things that are okay by the general population. We want to call them out on that because rules are there for a reason. And if you let one rule slide, you're going to be teaching the kids that it's okay to let other rules slide. The next one I think is one that we as coaches aren't always consciously teaching. All of these things are teaching tools to use with our players. All right, the next one is opponents. It's the big O. One of the things that I've seen a lot of players do, my own children included, is if they're going up against a rival team, I actually heard my 12-year-old daughter one time say, I hate that team. And I thought, oh my gosh, 12 years old already. She said, I hate that team. The girls are nasty. They're mean, Mom. They're not friendly. They don't even smile at us. And so she's got this idea that this is war. That is our enemy. It is battle. And what we need to do as coaches is teach respect for the opponents. How many of you have ever, as coaches or players, gone into a game thinking this is going to be a piece of cake? We are going to outplay this team. We beat them the last time around. And this is going to be a pretty easy game. I'm excited. Our players are, pretty confident that this is going to be a win on the scoreboard. Then you go into the game, and the skill level of your team goes down to the level of the team you played. Anybody with me here? Nod your head if you're with me.
Yep.
Yes. Conversely,
Yes.
it happens the other way as well, which is even more exciting when you're going into a contest and you're thinking, we're going to get crushed. This team is so much better than we are, and all of a sudden the skill level of your team rises, and the players are playing up to the competition, and that's when it gets really exciting. So as coaches, we need to teach that a worthy opponent is a gift, because a worthy opponent is what brings out the competition. The Latin root of the word competition is actually to strive with, not against. So we encourage the kids to be fierce all over the field. I want you to be a fierce competitor, but we also want you to be friendly. So if you knock somebody down in the heat of competition, when the play's over, go down and offer them a hand, help them up again. I had a lot of trouble with this, especially when I was coaching the younger, the little guys, because they hear so much from their parents. They hear so much from professional sports. They hear people screaming at the television and people saying, oh, I hate the Eagles, or oh, the Cubs are terrible, or whatever. So you actually have to reprogram them. And when I coached 6-year-old soccer, I would ask the kids at the end of the game, what was your favorite part of the game today? And I had one little girl who said, my favorite part of the game was the goo game. And I said, what's the goo game? And she said, at the end of the game where everybody stands in a line and you go, goo game, goo game, goo game, goo game. That was her favorite part. So I thought, you know what? Let's do that first. And the next time we had a game, I asked the other coach, I said, can we do the high five line first before the game? Because my kids really love that. And the coach was like, sure, let's do it. So that became a tradition on my team. Every time we faced a new opponent, we would do the goo game, goo game, goo game, goo game, right down the line before the game. And so the kids, most of the time, got to see their friends that they were in school with or played on another team with. They were giggling. They were happy. So it really set the tone that your opponents are your friends. We're going to go out there and play hard, and they're going to be your friends after the game, too. So I thought that was a really fun thing to do. All right, the big O at the bottom. Who thinks they know what this one might be? Respect of?
Officials.
Officials, yes. One of the most difficult positions to fill. Who wants to take a guess? Which sport is having the most struggle finding officials at this point? I'm going to give you 3 choices. Basketball, football, or lacrosse. I want you to take a vote. 1 is basketball, 2 is football, 3 is lacrosse. Guess which sport is finding the most difficult time getting officials? Take a vote.
Soccer.
The correct answer that I just learned from the U.S. Lacrosse Association is lacrosse. Lacrosse is losing officials at an alarming rate. Number 1, because it's one of the fastest growing sports, but number 2, because of disrespect of officials. The officials that are quitting are not saying it's because of the pay. They're actually saying the pay is pretty good. It is the disrespect from officials, parents, and players. And they can't get them. Without an official, you can't have a game. So teaching respect for officials is something that we as coaches need to do. Model what you want to see. Modeling that when an official makes a bad call, you know what? They're human too. They make mistakes. We've got to flush the officials' mistakes. Making sure at a parent meeting prior to the season, you tell the parents your view on officiating. That it's not always perfect, it's not always right, but it's live and they have to make a split-second decision. Some calls go our way, some don't. If we get a call that doesn't go our way, we're going to work twice as hard next time to get it back. And this, again, something that you need to model by your nonverbal and your verbal actions, and your team will follow. Let's go to the 4th one. So we're respecting the rules, the opponents, the officials. C is for teammates. Now this is something, again, that a lot of us assume jumping into a team, that we really are focusing on the skills, we're focusing on the games, we're focusing on the outcome. What sometimes coaches overlook is the teammates respecting each other. And there's no way that a team can be cohesive if they're having issues. And most of us have probably been on a team where players are at each other and they're not really getting along. What I would like you to do, coaches, is think back to your childhood. Think back to a team that you played on. And I want you to think back to an activity that your coach did with you that probably had nothing to do with the sport that was fun. Just either a fun team bonding activity or something silly that you remember from your childhood. And what I'm going to ask you to do is turn to the person next to you, and I want you to share that fun activity that coach did with you. Okay, so take a minute. So I would have everybody turn and share. At this point, it just brings out giggles, laughter, roaring. Everybody's happy, thinking. Can I have one of you just share, for example, like if you shared with a partner, share a story that you remember, something a coach did that was fun when you were a kid. No fun coaches, huh?
Kelly, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that we did when I was youth sports was it was soccer, but it was tag without a ball, and it just taught movement and cutting and things that we didn't realize we were doing, but it was tag within a confined area.
Awesome. So Heather, now from a coach's point of view, what are the benefits of doing that? What are the physical benefits of just playing tag without a ball in soccer?
Well, the start, the stop, the lateral movements, the burst sprints, the and also then just also the fun of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a fantastic example, and I think as coaches sometimes we forget. We have the kids stand on the line and run sprints because we think conditioning is such an important part. Well, I can tell you that the girls that I coach, if I put them on the line and we play freeze tag for 10 minutes, they're going to work twice as hard. They're going to sweat more. As Heather said, they're going to get lateral movement. They're going to get communication. I've had some of the best conditioning pre-practice time playing ultimate frisbee with my high school girls, because that is a game where they are moving. They can't dribble the ball. They have to only take 3 steps if you're familiar with ultimate frisbee. And the best lacrosse players are not necessarily the best frisbee throwers. So you find some kids that have strengths in other areas, and off-ball movement communication is fantastic. So I would take 2 or 3 examples and really bring out the fun that you remember. Also helps with team bonding and team respect. What we ask is that you teach your players that respect works on the field and off the field. So as coaches, come up with some creative ideas. Maybe plan some pizza parties, plan some bowling parties, plan some times when the team can get together and just have fun and not take away the seriousness of being on the field and just get to know each other. Because one of the reasons that kids on teams have problems is, number 1, jealousy. Number 2, they're feeling cliquey. Anybody ever been a part of a team that just had a lot of cliques going on and felt excluded? Absolutely. So let's break down those barriers. Let's work on teaching respective teammates by bringing out strengths in players. The roles that players have are a big strength. I had kids that gave the most energy and effort possible, and they couldn't catch a ball to save their life. But that was their role. That was something I valued them for, and I brought that out to the team. And the last one is self. Respecting themselves is something that we ask kids, we hope that all kids will do. But unfortunately, today we find out that they don't. And one of the things we talk about a lot at our athlete workshops are the problems with bullying and hazing and social media issues today. It's a big issue among kids. And I find more and more likely that self-respect for the kids is tough. Kids are losing confidence because of a tweet that somebody sent to them. So self-respect, we talk about doing what is right when others don't agree, something like Mallory Holtman and Liz Wallace did. And again, it's something as coaches we can teach these things to our players. So what I'm going to do now is, and I have sort of an example here. What I do with this part in the workshop, when I come to the workshop, I have cards that have ROOTS on them, and I tape them all around the room. So if this is a workshop where there's 30 people or less, this is an activity I love to do. So I've gone pretty quickly through each of those 5 areas. At this point, what I'm going to ask you to do is think about which one of these 5 areas is your team most challenged with. Either you as a coach or your players have difficulty, either respecting opponents, teammates, officials, yourself. And I have letters all around the room for the acronym ROOTS. When I tell you to, what I'd like you to do is go to one of those letters. So for example, if your team is having trouble with respecting their opponents, when you get there, I'd like you to share with the group of coaches that are there some of the challenges that you have or that your team has. And then I want you to go one step further, and I want you to think about how would you as a coach teach the skill of respecting opponents to your team. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to go do that, and then each group is going to share some of their best practices. Okay, so if everybody could please go, boom, everybody goes to their station. Takes about 3 minutes. Coaches get talking about challenges they have. They come up with actual teachable ideas. I've heard some of the best teachable ideas from this activity. Do I always do it? No. I don't always have time to get everybody up and moving around the room, but it just gives you another idea. I have tried it first before explaining all of these things, and that doesn't work as well. I find that it's helpful when the coaches actually know what we're talking about in each of these areas, and then have them break out and just dig into this. Many trainers at the end of this workshop, after they've done, this is now the end of a pretty much an hour or hour 15 minutes of talking. I've heard a lot of trainers just default to lecture for this honoring the game portion, and I think it's a shame. It does a disservice to it, because there's so many things and so many ideas that coaches have that they do to do this without even noticing. How do you teach respecting opponents? Well, we make sure that we take our glove off in boys lacrosse and we shake hands with the opponents. We have the officials come up before the game and address the team and talk to the team to make the official more human to them. We have ways that we put we give each of our players a buddy. And before the game, they have a buddy, and their job is to look for some tank filling, and fill that buddy's tank throughout the entire game, and look for some things that buddy's doing right. So these are ideas that coaches have already had before they've come to a Positive Coaching Alliance workshop, and I love to bring that out with this activity. And it's quick, and it's pretty easy, and it's fun. So then everybody comes back to their seats after we've gone through each of these areas, and I thank everybody. Thank you so much. Those ideas were fantastic. I really love hearing what you're doing already and how it fits into each of these 5 areas. What you basically have done is created a culture on your team. We really feel that it's culture eats strategy for breakfast. I heard that quote once, and I just love that, because so many of us really work on our strategy and our skills, but we forget that we have an overall culture on our team. And culture is simply defined as the way we do things here. My father was famous at saying, "Not under my roof, young lady." And he had a certain culture that he put into place, and we knew when we would cross the line. It's the same thing, the way we do things here. And not necessarily about what you tolerate as a coach, but what do you teach? What do you emphasize? That is most important. So those things that you feel very strongly about are those one-liners that you might remember about a coach that you had. Again, think back to your childhood. Think back to your youth or college sports experience. You might have had a one-liner that a coach that you really respected had, and you might even find yourself using it as a coach today. I had a coach that said, "Believe in yourself. If you rely on the belief of everybody else in you, you're not going to go far. You have to believe in yourself and your own ability." And that stuck with me, especially when I was in college and I had people that I felt were threatening me, and I had, maybe parents that were yelling or fans that were not happy with how it was going, and I thought, you know what, I believe in myself. That's what's important. I can't rely on the feedback from everybody else to fuel me. And that's something I remembered. Do any of you have something that you remember from a coach that you had, that one of those one-liners that just sticks with you, that you'd like to share?
Respect all, fear none.
Oh, I like that. Respect all, fear none. Thank you. How about another one?
We have one for our team, Kelly, that it's just kind of our tagline. It's all out, all the time, no regrets.
I like it. All out, all the time, no regrets. I like it. I heard a coach, I just went to a U.S. lacrosse workshop, and she said 1 degree was their line. 1 degree means water can be 211 degrees, and you can be that 1 degree that sets it over and starts it to boil. So will you be that 1 degree? I thought that was really cool. My husband, when I asked him this question, because he was eavesdropping on my call last night, his line that he remembers was, "Save me the big chunks." And I said, what is that? And he was a swimmer. He was a competitive swimmer. And he said anytime any of the swimmers would start to wimp out and say, "Oh, coach, that was so hard. I feel like I'm going to throw up," his coach would say, "Save me the big chunks." And that was something that he's remembered. And as disgusting as it is, he's actually used it with some of his swimmers, and they get a kick out of it, and they get back on the end of the line and swim more. So I just thought that was funny that that's what he remembered. All right. So one of the things we realize is that you're human, and you have emotions, and you're passionate about what you do, or you wouldn't be here doing it. So there are times where we might realize that we might blow our top, because, again, we are human, but we know that's not the right way to handle it. So if you look in your book on page 46, we have some tools that can help you. One of those tools that I find is very helpful is having a self-control routine. Just like a mistake ritual, it's something that you do to calm yourself down so that you can reset, so that you as coaches are ready for the next play. So I always have a water bottle with me constantly. When I feel my temperature start to rise, I grab my water bottle and I kind of walk away and just take a big swig of the water bottle and just say, "Okay, Kelly, cool it." I do a lot of self-talk, things like that. I've heard other coaches, one of the coaches on the call last night said she has a Beanie Baby that she keeps in her pocket and she squishes it as hard as she can, and she makes sure that's in the pocket of her jacket. And as long as she can squish that, that's something that it calms her down. Do any of you have anything that is sort of a self-control routine when you feel your top's ready to blow, something that you can do to calm yourself down in the moment? Just one. For time's sake, we'll just take one.
I just try and take a couple of deep breaths and just kind of let it go, let the moment go.
Yes, exactly. Did somebody else say something? Yes, so let it go. That's a great one. Yep, I can hear.
Oh, the microphone's working. I would just self-talk. I'd say don't be that coach. Like the one that you don't be the poor example, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those. So there's a few other ones in the book, too, that I think are very valuable. All right, at this point, the Mallory moment, there's a quote that are in the notes underneath the slide, and I like to read it. So at some point, you're going to be faced with a Mallory moment. I have a quote from our founder and CEO, Jim Thompson, that I love to read to you. Jim says, if you coach long enough, you will find yourself faced with your own big Mallory moment, opportunity, maybe more than once. But for sure, coaching provides a never-ending sequence of smaller Mallory moments. My challenge to you is by your actions time and again in those moments to elevate your game the way Mallory Holtman did. So I'm going to ask that you're going to have Mallory moments if you haven't already. Are you teaching a culture that your players and you will choose the right decision in the heat of the game and in the heat of the moment? All right, today we talked about 3 principles: the Elm Tree of Mastery, filling the emotional tanks, and honoring the game. And again, these are the 3 principles that run throughout every workshop that we do. At this point, as I said, for you, sake of time, because I want to get through the scenario menu pretty quickly, what I like to do at this part in the workshop is ask, what's a nugget that we can take home? What's something you remember from the Elm Tree of Mastery principle? And I'll just shout it out there, and somebody will say, oh, I remember you talked about effort goals, or I remember win at all costs, or development zone. It's something that they remember. Filling the emotional tank. What's something we can take with us that you remember from filling the emotional tank? And a lot of times people say 5-to-1 ratio, or buddy system, or whatever we talked about. And the last one, honoring the game. What's something you remember? And a lot of times coaches will say fierce and friendly. But it's just a quick review because it has been a long workshop. Again, I've seen trainers that have said, okay, turn to someone next to you and tell them one thing that you'll take home from each of these principles. One thing that you can use on your field or on your practice or tomorrow. All right, so this is the end of the basic workshop. Now you've probably been presenting for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. I like to leave at least 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the workshop for the scenario menu, because this is where they can take all of these principles and they can put them into practice. It's a great way to get coaches engaged and talking. Ideally, I'd love you to have a half an hour to go over the scenario menu, and I have had that happen too, and that's ideal because that's great. You can really dig in. One of the things that I encourage you to do, it's a lot of different scenarios with a lot of tools. Take the time to read through them. I'm going to show you kind of the setup and how they work, and then let you dig into them. But to make this easier for you, I told you, I think before, that 3 or 4 days before the workshop, we asked that trainers call the partner. And I did this in the very, very beginning, the very first hangout we did. We talked about questions that you asked the partner. One of the questions I always ask the partner are, what are some challenges or concerns that you have on your team? So right off the bat, when that person shares with me that maybe, for example, we've got a rec league team and we've got some kids that are so strong and other kids that are just starting. How do we coach them on the same team? Or they might say, parents, I have a lot of trouble with parent behavior. Or the kids, kids are being disruptive and they're not really listening. So I'll jot these down and I'll remember that when it comes to the scenario menu to make sure that I pick that scenario. So there's one, I usually start with one in each category. And this is how the scenario menu works. So it's all hyperlinked. So, for example, varying abilities is the one I just talked about. You click on that, and it'll give you a scenario, and it'll give you a question. So I usually read it out loud, or at this point, if I'm sick of hearing my own voice, I'll have someone else read it out loud. Here's the scenario. You have a wide range of ability on your team. A couple of players are stars and could compete well at a higher age group. Many players are average. Few are very raw. You've noticed the better players criticizing the weaker ones. How do you forge these players of widely varying abilities into a real team? This is a fantastic opportunity for you to get the coaches into groups. Depending on your audience, you might want to group them according to the age they coach. You might want to group them according to the sport that they coach. Or turn, if it's a tight packed room, you might want to say, turn to 2 or 3 people, get in groups of 2 or 3. where you're sitting and let's talk about this. I usually give about a minute or two. I don't give a lot of time for them to discuss it, and then get some answers back. How would you handle this? What would you do? So every scenario has a question, and then the next screen are the takeaways. Every single week of this course, you've done discussion questions, and the second question has been, give me an example, give me a sports-specific example of 2 tools that we mentioned in the toolkit. So you guys have been giving great examples for that. That's where this comes in handy, because this red box down here is the tool that they're using to explain how to handle that scenario. So this one is Just Right Challenges. It's on page 27. And here's some other ideas: enlisting top players, e-tank fillers, hardest workers, teachers, raise the profile of role players. If you're familiar with these and you go back in the book in the chapter, you can read all the details about them. So when you're finished with that scenario, you've explained it, you've got the audience to give their answers, you have then confirmed their answers with some things in the book that they can find. In the bottom corner, hopefully you can see this, there's a little house icon and there's an arrow. The house will bring you right back to the scenario menu. So you can go to an e-tank scenario. Magic ratio is a great one I love to use. You attended a workshop. You understand the 5-to-1 ratio, but it's hard to achieve. The reason I like this is because the next slide has a video.
Ryan, good command and stat.
And it's a video of Steve Henderson, one of our trainers out in California, and he's actually showing how to use positive charting. So I think it's a great scenario because it gives an example right there. The coaches can see how to use positive charting in a great way. And then it gives 3 other tools: the buddy system, 2-minute drills, positive charting is another one, and gives you the page numbers. Again, go back to the little house, goes back here. You can talk about misapplication of rules, bad calls, parents coaching, whatever it is. Take the time to dig through these. And find ones that you can connect with. Maybe you have ones that you can relate to better, or you have a great story for. What I would not recommend is saying, okay, like Jeopardy, who would like to pick a scenario? Let's talk about this. I wouldn't recommend that, because sometimes it might not be something that is even applicable to your audience. So I would have 2 in your pocket that you feel very comfortable with. When you're finished, after you're done, the last one, say time is starting to run out, this arrow right here will bring you to Herm Edwards, who's going to be this is going to close our workshop today. I'm going to let you hear from Herm Edwards, and this kind of ties the whole workshop up. They started in the beginning, talk about their legacy, and now Herm's going to wrap it up at the end. Go, Herm.
The book of your life is written. What will it look like? Will it say you made a difference? And you really want to make a difference. You have the ability, with young people in mind, that through sports they learn a lot about life. How you handle these young players, I think, is very, very important in their growth. Most of these players will not go on to be professionals, but the opportunity they have in sports is really a part of their life. Learn how to compete. That's probably the most important thing. And I think the way you compete is important. And you have to understand, someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. But at the end, how do you handle that situation is probably the most important thing if you're going to have a successful life.
So at the beginning of the workshop, I asked you to think about the most influential coach in your life and how you'd like to be remembered. So Herm's asking, when the book of your life is written, will you say you made a difference? How do you want to be remembered? What is the legacy you're going to leave? You wrote it down in the front of your book. Now, after hearing all of the wonderful ideas that we have, maybe you want to tweak it a little bit. Maybe there's things that you want to emphasize more than another with your players that you're going to leave behind. So someday when they're sitting in the audience like you are as coaches, and they're thinking back to, oh, yeah, I remember when I had that coach, I want to know what they're going to say about you. That is your legacy. So again, the next question that pops up are, what are 2 or 3 things from this workshop that could help make that happen? I personally do that back with the principals, but if that's something you want to wait to the end to kind of do a quick review, what did they find most helpful, you can do it then as well. Text to sign in, we talked about that in the beginning. I'm not going to worry about that right now. And then the end of the workshop, the last thing that you do before the coaches leave is you ask them all to turn to the last page in their book. And the last page of their book is an evaluation. We're constantly trying to make these workshops better, and I'm also trying to improve as a trainer. So if you wouldn't mind tearing out the last page in your book, that's an evaluation for us so that we can get your feedback and find out what you liked about the workshop, what you found most valuable. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, my name is Kelly Kratz. You can put that at the top and leave that on the table before you leave. I would really appreciate that. There's a lot of ways that you can get involved. Now, update your card. This is something we used to give out certification cards, which I have here. Now it's going to be done completely online. So you most likely will not have to worry about these cards at all. The coaches that texted when they signed in are going to get a certification card emailed to them after the workshop. But we have lots of ways you can get involved. PositiveCoach.org is our website. A portion of that website is called the Development Zone. The Development Zone is an awesome resource center. It's sort of the WebMD for coaches, and it has thousands of resources on it, videos, worksheets, ideas you can use, best practices of coaches. You type in an issue that you have, and all these resources will pop up. So that's part of our positivecoach.org website. We also have a Twitter, Facebook page, everything you could ever want to do. Feel free to share and spread our message as much as you can. We would love your support. If you have another organization that you're affiliated with that you think would love to hear our message, you can write that on the back of your evaluation, and we'll have somebody from PCA contact them. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Woo! 1 o'clock. I finished. Thank you all for coming to the workshop. Have a nice night. Drive safely. Okay. Oh, this is a slide, by the way. It's not up on here, but this is a slide that talks about the development zone. I encourage you, if you have Wi-Fi at your workshop, I pull up the website so I can show them where the development zone is. That seems to be really helpful, too. Thank you. All right. Now, it is 1 o'clock. I'm sorry we got started late because of technical glitches. But if any of you have to go, please feel free to excuse yourself. I will not be insulted in any way. But if you have questions, I do want to give you a chance if anybody has any questions before we jump on. Yes, it is recorded. Yep. So everybody that has to go, thank you very much for joining me. I will be in touch next week about a practice session, and then you can schedule your final session with me as well. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to join me. But I'm here if you have questions.
Kelly, can I get the link for this video, or is this going to be in the Google Docs since I wasn't able to get in early enough?
Yes, I will. I'll have the link. I'll send it out probably in about a half hour. I'll send out the links to both of these.
Thank you.
Yep. And if you have any questions too, if you have any questions, Angelique, about catching up, I know we didn't touch base, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to hang out here and talk to you about it for a minute.
That would be great. Actually, I feel supported. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Comments? Concerns?
Kelly.
Yeah.
I may be a tad confused about this. Slide 5 that poses the question, who is the most influential coach in your life and why?
Yep.
Do you discuss that answer later in the program, or do you discuss it right there?
I discuss it right in the beginning. Right in the beginning of the workshop, but then at the very end of the workshop, when the Herm Edwards slide comes up, I remind them that now it comes full circle, because someday, hopefully, they're going to be remembered as the most influential coach in one of their players' lives. So the very last slide at the end that has Herm Edwards saying, how do you want to be remembered? What is your legacy you're leaving? I like to remind them of the coach that they put down in the very beginning of the workshop.
Do you ever get any discussion at that point, a change of view, or is that just a rhetorical question?
Now, I've had some people that have said they want to add to it, like because I more often than not, I think filling the emotional tanks is the one area that I find in workshops people don't necessarily know how to articulate that. So I've had, because I asked you too, you can go back and look at in the front of your book in the very beginning of the workshop where I had you write how you wanted to be remembered. And I always say at the end of the workshop, if you'd like to change that answer or tweak it a little bit, feel free now that you've heard all these different ideas. So I've had people that have come up to me after a workshop and said, I really do want to be a tank-filling coach. And so they've gone back after learning some different things of the principles and added to that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anybody else?